Rolling to Provo with that attitude.
What? The Chiefs are one of 5 teams unbeaten in the National Football League. Some positives on the defense, including perhaps Nick Bolton's best game as a Chief. Let's talk about it.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our partners in possible here at KC Sports Network. I'm Kent Swanson. I'm here with Matthew Lane, looking fantastic in the new haircut. Like, what do you call that cut, Matthew? What is it called?
I honestly have no idea. So it's just out there. It's just what we're doing. Every now and then you got to look around and be like, let's try something. Let's see what's going on here. So this is what we have. Maybe
it's like a little fade on the side, but you left everything up on top, and like you got a little bit of Mike Gundy in the back, but like not enough to make it weird. Like
who knows? Maybe Wednesday there will be a new haircut too. Nobody has any idea what's happening with me right now. It's like I can keep everybody guessing every show at this point.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm here for the experiment.
We're getting the Gundy going slowly.
It's we got a name. It's called the Brohawk. Some are saying.
I don't think it's very Mohawk. It's all right. That's fine. We can go with that. I got to turn my fan on, so you can keep talking. I had to slide out of view.
Oh yeah. Well, Maddie, you are one of the hottest humans.
Thank you.
Yeah,
especially with all this hair right now.
You sweat like crazy. Yeah, like you eat like 6 meals a day. You sweat like an animal.
Okay, and this has gone from complimentary to rude, I think.
Well, what? I wasn't calling you hot. I'm sorry. I mean, you are, but
screw me then. My bad.
Let's get into this show, please, for the love of God. Thank you, everybody, for joining and hanging out with us after a Chiefs win. Thank you for hanging out with us during an NFL doubleheader. We do appreciate you for that. Let's get to the news of the day. Andy Reid has seemingly committed to Wanya Morris as the starting left tackle for this team, at least for the foreseeable future, it appears. I think coming off a pretty good game from a Wanya Morris there, Matthew.
Yeah, I thought Wanya Morris played really good in this game. Really good. I was going to walk that back, but no, I'm not walking it back. I thought he played a really good football game. The biggest thing, and I think I sent this in our group DM, the biggest thing that sticks out to me is when Wanya Morris shoots his hands, when he gets his hands on a rusher, they stop. It's then secure, like the pocket's secure. And I think after you get more time, I think you're going to see that Patrick Mahomes starts to feel a little bit more comfortable in that scenario because you have him, Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith. These guys all set a pretty stout pocket. And even Jawan Taylor maybe isn't the strongest guy, but he's been really good this year too. So all of a sudden, I just think you have like this comfort level of if the blocker lands his hands in the proper spot and isn't getting beat right away, there is going to be this consistent, stable pocket to live in. So that's what I noticed when they did that the one good NBC video package they had where they showed all of Wanya Morris's punches. Everyone was two hands. He was locking guys out. You could see the power. And I think it was just night and day difference. And when you watch Kingsley, who's a young guy, who's going to get better, but he'll shoot his hands. And then whether they land in the right spot or not, multiple times they would then get removed. And then he would start to give up ground or he'd give up the corner. So I'm not saying this is like a long-term guaranteed thing that more starts, but like it was really notable to me how just strong he looked at left tackle comparatively.
I think it's a good point to you that first off, Wanya Morris played well. And I think deserves to get another look out there. So like, there's just that off the top. So you're right. Like simply the performance that he put together in that game warrants him getting another opportunity to get back out there. But I do think that, it's a great point about Patrick Mahomes going to watch the film. I've maintained, like, I don't think he's looked entirely comfortable this season from the pocket, and probably a lot of it has to do with the left tackle play. I think the interior is fantastic. We always acknowledge that, right? But I do think that there's been some, definite struggles and confidence from operating in the pocket. And, Maddie talks about Patrick Mahomes throwing with his chest and all that stuff. You gotta be, if you're not feeling as comfortable back there, that can inhibit that a little bit. So simply Mahomes watching the tape this week and seeing how good of a job Wanya Morris did in this game, I think goes a long way in saying, okay, well, let's, maybe he's going to come out of this game feeling a little bit better heading into week 4, get some confidence, get some momentum back just because of what we just got to see, out of him. One thing that I wanted to talk about Wanya Morris a little bit. Well, no, you go ahead. If you want to jump in, I'll save the thought for a minute.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to say, like, I thought there was maybe a small step backwards in the run blocking from Morris and from Kingsley going to Morris, but not significant. Like, Morris still creates the movement. He just doesn't have the same like movement ability. He still moves guys. Like, he still moves bodies. He just doesn't have the same ability to get out in space. Not that he can't get there. He's just not quite as athletic, quite as explosive. So I do think that you saw a small step back in that regard. It was also very helpful that Carson Steele was your running back and everything was coming downhill. So you weren't asking him to, showcase a ton of range. But then as a pass protector, I had seen this narrative coming out a little bit already in this game is, oh, they're helping Wanya Morris at the level they should have been helping the rookie all this time. Look at all this extra help he's got. I did this quickly, so maybe my numbers are here slightly off, but we had to bring back some analytics for this because I agreed with that on passing situations. So we're talking second and 7+ or third down and over 3 yards. Okay. We held 12 reps from Wanya Morris in pass protection that weren't like a straight up RPO or weren't something, that was clearly not a real pass set. 12 of those 12 reps, 7 of them, he had no help. I mean, no tight alignment next to him, no running back releasing tight off his hip. There was one that was like a swing route, but like that doesn't give you any help because it's depth. It's not releasing like a flare right off his hip. So 7 of those with 0 help. 1 soft chip where a running back did come out tight off his hip, but he didn't, make any contact. He didn't slow down his route at all. 2 hard chips where a tight end on one rep and then a running back on another did set their feet, actually deliver a hit to the defensive end, and then move on. 0 double teams, and 2 times they aligned a tight end or a wide receiver right off his hip to slow down the rush. No contact. They ran a route entirely, but they did line off his hip. What I'm saying is he did not get any more help than any other offensive tackle. They barely sent any extra help. They sent a couple chips towards him. That's it. It was never a running back staying in to pass pro and not going on a route. It wasn't Joe Thuney just completely sliding away to throw out a double team. They were not sending extra help towards Wanya Morris. So I want to say, like, I've seen that already floating around, and I don't think that's fair to what Morris just did out there on the field. He went out there and ran essentially the same offense, the same protections, and just had a good game. That's okay.
And, I will also acknowledge, I think Trey Hendrickson's a tougher matchup.
Yeah, that might matter.
Yeah, like I don't think it might. I don't know if it would have looked as clean for him coming out of that game as well. Bumpa B asks the question: am I wrong in saying Wanya has quicker feet than Kingsley? So I don't think Wanya has quicker feet than Kingsley, but I think his footwork is better right now than Kingsley's is at this point, I think. And so, like, I think Kingsley at times will stop his feet, but I don't know if it's about pure foot quickness as much as it is footwork right now. And I think that's making a big difference. I don't know if you agree or disagree, Maddie.
Yeah, I think Kingsley's really slow out of his stance. So that also plays a role. Like, yeah, when you're looking at foot quickness, you're going to try to like see just how fast the feet are coming up and being put back down. But when you're starting a little bit later than everybody else, that's already going to look slower. Than you were right. I think it's less about the speed and more the footwork. Kingsley has gotten into a really bad habit of Garrett Bolzing. And what I mean is he's flipping his hips real early in his pass set, which opens up your back hip. He goes from his butt facing the quarterback to his butt facing, the sideline instead real fast. And I think Morris, while I don't know if his feet are quicker, he does a better job maintaining the proper angle deeper into the pocket. So it just looks cleaner. It doesn't look quite as sloppy. He covers more ground because he's not going like at a weird curve and he's kind of going more of a straight line. So I'm generally with you. That was how I saw it. I'm glad somebody mentioned that too, because I think these are all things that are fixable for Kingsley. And like, you want to sit there and bank on his upside going forward in the future if Wanya Morris does start to struggle, although, hey, let's give him a chance to struggle before we start calling for him to be back on the bench again too.
No, absolutely. And I think that's kind of one of the comments I wanted to make with this is Wanya Morris is not like chopped liver here. And he's not like, he shouldn't be discarded just because he was 1 draft ago in the 2023 NFL draft. And like, I think Kingsley's the shiny new toy, and the idea of Kingsley Suamataia is great. He's got to, if he was able to get thrown to the fire in year one and be consistent and competent and capable, that was the hope. And I think it looked like something that was going to happen after week one, but obviously week two was just drastically different for him. And that's where we're at now. But look, Wanya Morris, the Chiefs have Wanya Morris under club control for the next 2 seasons as well. Like they have Kingsley for the next 3. They have Wanya for the next 2. So they've got 2 offensive linemen, one that has the potential to be a good NFL left tackle and one that is proving to be a capable one so far. And getting that out of both of them would be tremendous and is still in the realm of possibility, is in the range of outcomes for both of them. So as long as the Chiefs are getting that position solved, like I think that's what matters the most, is getting the left tackle position solved and having those 2 guys available, having those 2 guys on this roster. I'm encouraged by. I think Wanya was written off entirely as a player, I think to a degree, just because Kingsley got the opportunity right off the bat, and the Chiefs are trying, and we're trying to make that happen. But it doesn't mean that Wanya is chopped liver, and he's performed well to this point. I'm happy to see that. The other thing, thinking about it, is this is a little bit too long term. Chiefs have another Super Bowl to win, despite how well the Buffalo Bills are playing. But there's a scenario where if Kingsley can develop this year, play left tackle next year, Wanya could play guard. Like Wanya could kick inside and play guard too. Like I think he has the potential to do that. He's got the mass along the interior. He's got some more, I think he could potentially kick inside and be a best 5 for this team next year as well. So like I don't know. I think the fact that Kingsley's here is a great thing still, and the fact that Wanya is showing improvement, I think, is pretty important too.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to your general point there is like, yeah, Wanya Morris was a 3rd-round draft pick the Chiefs just traded up for last year, right? Like we don't have to sit here and say like, oh, just because he's winning, this is a terrible thing for anybody else. Like sometimes offensive tackles can be a little bit of a work in progress. Everybody likes to talk about redshirting a quarterback. It's okay to redshirt an offensive tackle coming from an air raid system who played on the left side for 1 year. Like that's okay if that's the way it plays out. Or if he comes back and wins the job because in practice he's clearly better, that's cool too. We've now seen like the lowest or like the baseline performance from Wanya Morris this year, and it was pretty good. It was more than good enough, I think, to win a Super Bowl, to go on and keep going forward and maybe be better at the position than you were last year. So yeah, if he gets above that level, perfect. Put him in there. If not, roll out Wanya Morris until everything gets going. So I wanted to make sure that as we kind of went through it, this isn't like a de facto, like, oh, it was really bad before, this guy just got thrown in, we're just waiting for him to get replaced again. Like, I think not only does Wanya Morris deserve more credit than I think just some people, not everybody, some people initially given him, it's like he played a really good football game and they didn't have to adjust their offense for him like at all whatsoever. So let him keep rolling. And I think that's where Andy Reid's mindset is right now. And I wouldn't be surprised unless he gets absolutely crushed this upcoming week if you see that at least until the bye week.
I agree. No, I think that's probably the direction that this is heading. Now, we made relatively definitive statements about the Chiefs getting capable left tackle play out of Kingsley Suamataia and expecting that to be what this season was going to look like, and then it didn't happen. So, there's still time, but I think the hope is that both of these guys continue to push each other. Both these guys continue to get better, improve. Kingsley seems like he's wired the right way to continue to develop and do the things necessary to become a pro in the National Football League. And I think you just hope Wanya continues to just play at a level that is warranting him continuing to keep that job. So, I think that there could be good for both of these guys, and it could be really good for the Chiefs to have 2 capable offensive linemen on this roster as the season continues. Let's talk about Rashee Rice. This is not a guy that's been overlooked, and a guy that has been getting plenty of credit, as he should be. Fantastic performance from Rashee Rice yet again. Matthew, you spent a lot of time talking last week about how this offense needs to start funneling through Rashee Rice, less, maybe not phasing Travis Kelce out, but taking some pressure off of Travis Kelce by letting this offense run a little bit more through Rashee Rice. And my goodness, did it look good when it did.
Yeah, well, and it's less even about like trying to phase Travis Kelce out, although like I don't dislike that as a theory, right? I don't dislike that theory of like they got to learn to run this offense without Travis Kelce because he won't always be here. So like I don't mind the concept there, but it was more so even just for this year. I think this offense is going to function better when you have more plays where Rashee Rice is your first read or the primary read that you're trying to get the ball to. Maybe that's not always number one, but like he's the guy that you are putting in the position that you think is going to win. So we saw that a couple times. There was a couple routes in this game that I'm pretty sure we've seen Travis Kelce run a billion times. These little option routes, these little, I don't know what to call them because they're just kind of go find space and zone, turn around and wait for the football. And like he ran one of those on one of his like intermediate catches of one of the few that the Chiefs threw. And so I think they kind of understood, at least in this game, that they needed to transition away from trying to get Travis Kelce the ball as much as possible. No matter what Mahomes says and how they're calling up all these plays for him, no matter what Andy's saying, I think we all see it. Travis Kelce still can get open. He's still going to play a role. Like, I don't want to say that he's not, but the days are gone where you're going to send 12 targets at him and he is going to maximize them in the way Rashee Rice just did. And I think you even saw the Falcons as the game wore on, it wasn't 87 getting the attention. It was number 4. As that game went on, it was number 4 who was having more eyes on him, more guys trying to cut him across the field. Oh, you want to run him to the middle for these option routes? You're now going to have to beat 2 defenders, not just one. Like that shift happened for Atlanta as well. And I think that was kind of the biggest key of other teams are seeing it a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that's the case, and that's okay. And I don't think, like Travis Kelce's our age, Matthew. Just so you know, despite the haircut, he's in his mid-30s, like both of us are. And it's okay for Travis Kelce to not be a 12 target guy for 18 weeks of the National Football League season. Like, it's okay. In fact, if this offense can function, if this offense can have success and do good stuff and be able to win football games, which they've done to this point against 3 good teams, like we've kind of talked about, I'm impressed with the Falcons. I think the Falcons are going to be a formidable challenge in the NFC for some teams. And I think they could potentially win that division still. But, if they can continue to win football games and keep Travis Kelce, healthy, keep Travis Kelce, playing at the right time, peaking at the right time like he did last year. I mean, you saw how good he was and how problematic he was. Part of the reason that the Chiefs offense had the resurgence they did is because Travis Kelce was playing a lot more like Travis Kelce late. One of the best routes that we've ever seen him run was that little drag route against Fred Warner in the Super Bowl. So it's like he's still got it in him. So yeah, if you can build the boat out of something else, if you can build the boat around multiple elements, like, man, go for it.
Yeah, there's no reason that you can't use 2. And I think that's been the most impressive part. So regardless of what happened from Rice from last year to this year, he probably needed to be a higher priority in this offensive structure, right? Either way, even if he didn't improve at all from his rookie year, they needed to get him involved a little bit more. But then you look at his improvement. When you're trying to use Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice together, one of the issues you run into is they win so much in the exact same way that at times it can be difficult to work them both at the same time where you want them to. What we've seen from Rice this year, though, is an improvement to his game. He's gotten a lot better with his releases off the line of scrimmage. He's shown the ability to win some routes vertical. I know we've only really seen the one this year, but he beat a fraud goal deep again on the interception to Worthy on the other side of the field on his little fade route. He's got it behind defenders a couple times now. So he's showing this ability to win on the outside as well as vertical. And maybe that's not his bread and butter, but the ability to do that means that it's easier to incorporate him and Travis Kelce when Travis Kelce starts to come online a little bit easier. It's a little bit better because this guy can now do everything. So yeah, Rashee Rice was he was trending towards being a very good number 2 wide receiver in the NFL last year. I think the early, reports from this year, because he's taken these steps, like I said, as a vertical player with his releases, being able to play outside. I mean, we're right there. We are kicking. We're not knocking. We're kicking the door to become like a legitimate wide receiver 1. And I don't know if that was even anticipated for him so early in his career.
No. And I mean, yeah, like his ascension has been impressive. And I think like one thing I've noticed is like Mahomes has been very bullish on Rashee Rice. Like he has the vision for Rashee Rice and how he can be used and how he can be maximized and how, he can kind of be next in this offense. Like just listening to him talk about him, the belief that he has and like his ability to develop in a variety of ways to continue and it's happening. It's happening before our eyes. And so like credit to Mahomes, like the vision was there for him more than it was anybody really. And so like he was early. Like Mahomes has seen it every day, right? But he's been early on Rashee Rice, and it's definitely paying dividends so far this year. We're gonna take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Shop Chiefs tickets and more with no fees. Plus, save big with code KCSN at ticketsforless.com, the official ticket provider of KC Sports Network.
Thanks, everybody, hanging out with us tonight. Yes, promo code KCSN gets you the best discount available at Tickets for Less. So when you're looking to buy those tickets, make sure you are using promo code KCSN for the best discount available on tickets at Tickets for Less. Let's talk. I wanted to talk about the offense, but let's talk about one more thing on the offense before we get out of here, and start talking about the defense.
Yeah.
We've seen some good things. We've talked about some of the positives. Wanya Morris playing better. Rashee Rice looking great. Travis Kelce still flashing. They still went to the Travis Kelce well early in the second half. Building blocks seem to be there. Run game looked good. Definitely some inconsistencies within this offense still that is keeping them from lighting the world on fire. So in your opinion, what's missing from the offense so far in the first 3 games?
Yeah, it's still just the confidence or the comfortability of throwing the ball intermediate. I think deep, they're doing enough to scheme up deep shots, whether they're taking them or not, whether they're hitting them or not. I think that they have found a way to scheme up some deep shots enough for that to be like respected and to eventually come back and play. I'm not so worried about them finding chances to throw a post route to Xavier Worthy, to giving him or Rashee Rice a chance on these go routes, but it's the intermediate stuff. I haven't seen the Chiefs do a good job at all at throwing the ball between 10 and 20 yards. In fact, I've seen Mahomes not take some shots there when I think they've been open. Like we talked about the corner route last week. This week, I think there was a couple overs that the ball just came out a little too quick, that he didn't just give somebody an extra beat that in years past, whether it was Juju in his first stint or Tyreek Hill, especially when he was here, that I feel like would be given that extra little bit of leeway, extra little bit of eye discipline from Mahomes to see if they break open. And so I'm fine if you're getting a lot of too high stuff and you're trying to run safeties off and not trying to force the ball deep. That is okay. But at some point in time, you also got to start throwing the ball with better success to the intermediate areas of the field. And that's where I think Mahomes in particular hasn't thrown the football very well this year. And it also seems like he's kind of lacking confidence in putting the ball in those spots.
So when you're talking about intermediate, just for some people, when you're talking about the intermediate, you're talking about the space in between the safeties behind the linebackers. Like that's typically what you define as the intermediate areas of the field. So what wins in those areas? Well, a lot of dig routes, the stuff crossing the middle of the field, the over routes, the digs, even some curl routes. It doesn't have to be anticipation throws all the time in the intermediate. Throw in curl routes in those areas of the field. It doesn't seem like it's been a super high priority for the Chiefs at this point either to try to hit in those areas either. We're just looking at some of the play call structure. Like I don't think it's been, a focal point necessarily for them either, which has been interesting. But I think you're trying to figure out a little bit too, to a degree, like who are you throwing those dig routes to? Like if you're it's Travis Kelce. Like Travis Kelce is the guy that you like to throw those intermediate routes. I think they it was an intermediate route that they hit in the second half. Like Travis Kelce is a guy that typically wins there. Rashee has some ability to do it there, but like Justin Watson is another guy that you're throwing the ball to in the intermediate a little bit. Like you think about him and some of the vertical stuff they've tried to do with him, but like I think he's had more success in the intermediate at times too. So like, I don't know. What do you think the answer from a personnel perspective is? Who do you got to try to get involved more?
Well, I mean, okay. Xavier Worthy needs more chances on not just go routes or screens. Like, I mean, I don't want to keep beating this, to like a dead horse here, but you got to give him some more opportunities to run real routes or at least to put him in space. Like if you're going to call up a corner route and he gets one-on-one with the safety, you got to take it. If you're going to put him on the backside, it doesn't always have to be a go route. You want to run a dig with a backside dig with Xavier Worthy, I can guarantee you the safety's going to get enough depth that you are going to have, if he beats the corner or whoever it's going to be, he's going to have the space to run that dig in behind it. So like give him some of these opportunities. I'm not saying you want to throw him into the teeth of the defense. Like the whole concept here is this is probably a little bit deeper than where he's going in to get drilled immediately, but then it doesn't have to be Diggs. You can throw the corners. That's a throw that the Chiefs had a lot of success with last year. We threw a lot to Watson, to MVS, guys like over and over again. Mahomes throws it generally pretty well, not the throw to Gray, notwithstanding from this past week. So just there's more ways to incorporate Worthy, I think, than just a deep threat. Get him involved. I'm actually okay with Rice. I thought as last year went on, he got a lot better taking hard, like 90-degree breaks, especially at pace. So running a basic route or a deeper dig route, like he got better at that as the year went on. So give him some of those. Worthy doesn't have to run every deep over. You can put the bigger body Rice on there and let him go. Yeah, he's not going to outpace everybody, but guess what? You're seeing a lot of zone. He's really good at finding that space. Get him the ball on the move instead of 5 yards downfield, 15 yards downfield, and see what happens. I think they need to show more intent at doing that. Go back and watch how Peyton Manning played football his entire career. And want to tell me that like too high or cover two or anything ever stopped him from throwing the ball intermediate? Throwing to Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison, I understand, but like you can just go see ideas of go watch the Rams with the Greatest Show on Turf. Their entire offense was based around beating these kind of defenses, and they did it very well because they threw the ball to these areas and hit these open spots versus too high structure stuff.
I think a lot of the 2-eye stuff has done better, especially with the way that the Chiefs aren't turn around, play action, back turn to the defense, and then throwing a dig behind linebackers. Like that's not how that they are able to win in the intermediate area of the field. And it feels like they struggle to get the ball in the hashes in the middle of the field right now. Like that's one of the biggest concerns, I think, when you're talking about the intermediate areas of the field. You're right. It has to be the corners. It has to be the deep outs. It has to be the comebacks and those kind of areas that they're going to find success throwing in that intermediate area. And that's a bummer because the Chiefs have had a lot of success throwing the ball over the middle of the field. And whether it's, some of the too high stuff, and if you're playing at Tampa, it can be tricky to throw a dig against Tampa. Like you're not going to really be able to throw digs consistently against like a Tampa 2 type look. So you have to try to find ways to throw the ball outside the numbers. And even Travis Kelce's intermediate throw was outside the numbers. Justin Watson's intermediate throw was outside the numbers in that game. So it presents some challenges, and maybe just how the Chiefs are currently dialing stuff up right now. It's going to be a challenge to really win in that area of the field. Even though, like I think the Shanny tree does a tremendous job of being able to throw over the middle of the field and throw digs over the middle of the field. Like
you're gonna get me off on a tangent about the Shanny tree. Something that I don't know if Andy Reid has done a fantastic job of continuing to adapt as defensive structures have. Andy Reid is still very much 3-by-1, and we're gonna flood a lot of zones. Defenses have gotten a lot better at playing too high, not showing you their coverage pre-snap, playing too high, and then doing man match stuff and or doing split field coverage. So they're not wasting defenders at the same rate that they were when this kind of offense really took off. I'm not saying Andy's a bad offensive mind. He is obviously one of, if not the greatest of all time. I just think, like most coaches, he's a little stuck in some of his ways. And one of those is his idea of offense is flooding zones, and defenses have gotten a lot better at handling flooding of zones. Whereas you go to the Shanny tree, they seem to be a little bit ahead of the current defenses because of the run game in particular, but also because they are a little bit more of like this hard play action passing game. They do use the backside routes instead of trying to flood one side of the field. They're using kind of the whole field with some of the stuff. So we don't need to go too far down that rabbit hole. It's just something that's always on my mind is watching the Chiefs, how many times 3 to 4 wide receivers end up in the same third of the field, which is the goal. Like that's what they want to do. And that's not bad. It's just, I think defenses are getting a lot better at handling it.
And he's always trying to build triangles, man. He's just always trying to build triangles of route distribution. And hey, look, it works. And they are brilliant. And they're still one of the best offensive, he's still one of the best offensive minds, and this offensive staff is still exceptionally good. But there's definitely some blind spots that they're working through right now. And you just keep working it. Like, Andy says, you just keep working it. You keep working through some of these things, and you keep, there's building blocks to be excited about. There's some areas of the field you'd like to see them have more success in. And I think it will start coming as the season goes on. And I think they'll continue to find more ways to have more consistency on offense. One quick comment, and we're not going to get into it too much because we spent a lot of time. I think one thing missing from this offense is the red zone consistency too. Like they've got to find better footing in the red zone, in the low red specifically. Sometimes the best way to be good on low red offense is to score in the high red, or just score on explosive plays. Like that can go a long way, right? But yeah, I think there's still a lot of work to be done there, and they've got to work some things out. And it's fun to throw to Wanya Morris when it works, and it's not as fun to see Leo Chenal in the 3-point stance and the guard get blown up on the backside of the play and lose yards. So they'll keep working. Again, they'll keep working. They're 3-0. You don't get too upset about a team being 3-0. You just hopefully they continue to find their footing. And I do think that this team will
fine tuning.
Yeah,
fine tuning.
Continue to do that. And like this team has the right mentality because they've won 2 Super Bowls in a row, and they've got one of the best players. They've got the best player in the history of the world on their team, and he's not going to let them slip. And you heard him taking accountability for the stuff he has to improve on. I think that will permeate throughout the rest of the organization, the rest of that team. Let's move on to the defense, who I think continues. Like, before we get too far into like some of the specifics about the defense, has the defense exceeded your expectations to this point in the season, Matthew?
See, this is tricky. Watching live, I want to say yes, right? Like when I'm watching the games, I don't feel like the defense is struggling. It feels like they have been able to not miss too much. Like they're clearly missing L'Jarius Sneed in some ways and Charles Omenihu. Like they're clearly missing those guys, but they've performed as well as I could have thought without them. So like watching live, that's what I think. Then I go look at the metrics for what this team has done and, you know, how their EPA, success rate, whatever they're giving up, they are very low ranked almost across the board and just about everything at this point in time. And that really took me for a loop because when I'm watching, I don't ever feel like I'm watching a bad Chiefs defense. It doesn't feel bad. It feels like what they give up is the stuff you want to give up. It feels like when they need to get a stop, they get a stop. But yet when you come out and you're like 29th in EPA per play and 29th in success rate and not particularly good versus the pass or the run, which is kind of skewed by Lamar Jackson scrambles, but either way, like it's kind of surprising to me. So I think they've been about what I expected them to be when I watch. It's just, I'm surprised the metrics are so poor.
Yeah. And still very early sample size. There's some explaining away of some of it to your point.
Sure.
Lamar Jackson's legs, some random explosives, you know, the first possession against the Falcons, that kind of stuff. But I was kind of curious what you thought. The eyeball test, it looks a little bit better. It looks a little bit better than I thought it might be. And the offense looks a little bit worse than I hoped it would be. Maybe that was because I thought Hollywood Browns could be there. I don't know. But
yeah,
I was just curious. The star of the game for the Chiefs, though, was Nick Bolton. And Nick Bolton has, you know, the lightning rod that is Nick Bolton that will draw a lot of conversation on both sides of the aisle when it comes to, you know, is he good? Is he not? Which I want to I think the conversation around Nick Bolton needs to be framed from like, is he good or is he bad? I think the conversation tends to be tied to his next contract a lot, and I think that's really where I think a lot of the conversation stems from him. Because if you say he sucks and he's worthless, you're wrong. And if you say he should reset the market with like Roquan Smith's number, you're also wrong. Like there's a place where it exists where Nick Bolton's a good football player, very obviously a good football player, and what you're willing to pay first off a linebacker and what you're willing to, you know, pay him specifically, I think is where there's so much polarization in all this. But Nick Bolton had a tremendous game against the Atlanta Falcons, doing a lot of good things, both in little in that game.
I do think the contract number plays a part in the Nick Bolton discourse. And then I also think that this isn't the only thing, but the Kansas City Chiefs have a couple college football teams local to them. One is the Missouri Tigers, where Nick Bolton played. One is the Kansas Jayhawks, who is a big rival to the Missouri Tigers. And the other is K-State, who's, I guess, kind of a rival. They're kind of there. Like they're a rival, just like it's not as big as the Jayhawks. I don't mean that bad about them. It's just not as big of a rival. But you have some fans that are going to have an allegiance to a college. So you're going to think higher or lower of a player that went to one of those schools. And I think that plays a role. And then so Nick Bolton comes to the Chiefs, and I think you have some fans that immediately think he's going to be a little bit better than whatever the plays on the field. And you'll have other fans that are always going to think it's going to be a little bit lower than what you see on the field. And it's about trying to find the middle ground. The thing with Nick Bolton is he's been a very volatile player. He makes very splashy plays, very flashy plays. And he also has some struggles that do show up at times in games. And so whatever side of that fence you're on, you can make an argument and you can come with straight examples. So I think that's where you get to a big discourse, is there's a lot to work with. This game against the Falcons, one of the big flashy games, a lot of big plays. We're talking, obviously he's the guy that comes up with the stop on the 4th down. He gets, the free run because the defensive line does a great job, but Nick Bolton still triggering fast, comes downhill, runs the loop, and makes a tackle right there in the spot, gives up no extra yards. He had a couple like screen attempts that he was the guy that swallowed up, that batted him down. I don't think he technically made contact, but he had that one throw from Kirk Cousins that went just over his outstretched fingers where he clearly was in a passing lane that impacted the throw. It's like, I thought he generally played a very good game, and you saw the flashy plays that make the highlights from Nick Bolton. And I think that's what gets people talking and then starting to have the contract talks and everything like that. So great game from him. And it was nice to see. We said last week, we thought his legs were getting under him. He didn't look like the same player that you saw in week 1, where he looked like he was I don't want to say out of shape, just not ready for a football game physically.
Game shape is hard to get into, man. If you haven't had much camp, like
chasing Lamar Jackson.
And chasing
that
Lamar.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Right. And so like he clearly was getting into better like game shape last week, even though if the play, it wasn't as flashy, didn't have as flashy of a game last week. This week, the Chiefs come in with the goal to stop the run. And maybe the Falcons played a little bit more in a box than the Bengals did for him, which helped. And like he had a great game, and he was one of, if not their best defender in this game. So like this is where you get kind of, I think, lost in the discussion about Nick Bolton.
Yeah. I think one of the other things with Bolton, that part of the reason that he is so the organization loves him, right? And like every player speaks so highly of him because intangibly he brings a lot more to that game than I think anybody on the outside is going to understand. Now, is it always easy for us on the outside to, acknowledge that with a valuation? Absolutely not. Right? Like we aren't going to be able to really, no one on the outside can actually give a price tag on the value of what that is. But I think that's part of it too, right? And Sam McDowell, I think it was Sam McDowell that wrote a story about that particular play with Nick Bolton making the big stop on 4th down. And basically it said Nick saw that play early in the game, or a similar look earlier, and was able to trigger it because he saw it already once. Like I think he was pointing to the gap that it was going to go to, and he knew where that play was heading before the snap even occurred. It's because like that's how smart Nick Bolton is, and if he sees it once, he's good. And that's always a good thing to have when you're Steve Spagnuolo, which is part of the reason Steve Spagnuolo gloms onto him so much, is because of the mental acuity, the mental side of Steve Spagnuolo. So Bolton, or of Nick Bolton. So Bolton's even crediting, or people are even crediting Bolton's just mental acumen for the reason that play happened, is because he had seen it already prior and he already knew where it was going before the play even happened. But I think that also makes it kind of difficult for the discourse around him when a lot of what he does is, maybe intangible. But like I talked about on the post-game show, like he does do little things like help opening up a free rusher, like turning the hips of a blocker to just help open up a free rusher. Like he's actively turning the rusher himself. Physically turning him, not just influencing, which he's done too, but like actively, helping get a free rusher. So like that's where some of those things, kind of come into play with him as well.
I think they said, Jacob said in the chat here, it was similar to the Rashee Rice run, is what the Chiefs would say. Like it was similar to what the Chiefs ran. And so he like just identified it from the formation, and then like he was able to drive on it so quick. And listen, like I think Nick Bolton played a fantastic game. I also think what you saw as the game went on, when his impact, I think you really started to feel it, was when the Chiefs started blitzing a little bit more, in particular doing a lot of run blitzing. And like, I think getting Nick Bolton moving downhill, he's very good at reading stuff out very quickly on the move. When like things are changing, he reads it well on the move. And so I think you do that. He's seeing these screens. He's seeing running backs try to leak out to the flat. He's reading the blocking scheme on the go. Like, I think he's really reactive when he's coming downhill like that. So I do think that, and Spags knows that. So like they start getting into those looks when they need big plays. Not just Nick, but they'll send both linebackers, or they want to make the offense have to adjust, and Nick will kind of make them right on the fly. And I thought you actually saw a huge step back when Jack Cochran had to come in for him for those couple plays. Mm-hmm. I mean, the angles he was taking to the outside were bad. Like he was running just as fast as Nick Bolton is out there, right? But like the angles were really bad. He was taking himself out of plays. Like he was actively a huge step back. And that shouldn't be a surprise when we're talking about a good starting linebacker going out of the game. It's just, that was one of the times where it was really noticeable. I think in years past, when he's come out of games for a series, you almost are like, oh, wow, this is kind of refreshing because it just looks a little bit more active, a little bit more speedy, a little bit more athletic. That was one of the times where I saw it. And I was like, oh, you can't go more than a couple series like this until you have to figure something out.
I thought it was a good performance from Nick Bolton. Obviously, I think it was a great performance. I think it was one of the best performances that he's had, and it was a great job, by him. I did follow up with it. It wasn't just the play that he'd seen the Chiefs run. There was a run for Bijan Robinson earlier in the game at the goal line that he gave up, that he made him, like he said, like basically like he didn't see it earlier, but he knew the gap that they were going to try to run to it because of the look that they had run similarly. So it was a Bijan touchdown, I think.
That was not a great run because he definitely got caught on his heels flat-footed, and Bijan pushed him the extra 1.5 yards into the end zone because he was not triggering downhill at that point. So that's a great play by him.
That's the play he cites as what helped him kind of identify the next play. And that is from Sam McDowell. The KC Star wrote a great article kind of about that play, breaking down why. And I think it kind of encapsulates a lot of, I think it encapsulates the Nick Bolton discourse a lot too. And yeah, it's going to be a fun off season. I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more of that.
I just want to say real quick too, Nick Bolton, when we talked about a little bit, he's at his best as a weak side linebacker. I know he plays like the Mike. He's the middle linebacker for the Chiefs. I've always thought he's at his best when you get him in situations where he is flowing untouched. If you could take him and put him in the early 2000s NFL and have him be a weak side linebacker when passing the ball, spreading the game out, attacking linebackers was not the goal of every single team, he would be a phenomenal weak side linebacker when the goal was to run the ball more, because he is great when he doesn't have to navigate traffic, when he just gets to flow with the ball, come downhill. The issue that he runs into sometimes is when teams go heavy and attack directly at him with fullbacks, with pullers. That's where we see some more issues. He was great versus the outside zone rushing attack of the Falcons. And I wonder if this is something to kind of keep an eye on the rest of this year. The Chiefs did great versus outside zone. I wonder how many more teams try to attack them that way. Like the Falcons had no running lanes to really get going. I wonder if we don't see teams start to go back to more gap stuff and see if they can't get, climbers or pulling blockers up on these linebackers to kind of neutralize their impact.
Well, the Chiefs are owning the run game right now, so that's been very noticeable so far. That they're just shutting the run down. They're shutting key runners out. The cornerback position, not going to be as glowing of a conversation. I'm not sure. I don't know. What's your take on the cornerback position right now, Matthew, outside of Trent McDuffie?
That Jalen Watson is solid. He is there. He's going to be there. He's going to make some plays. He's not going to shut guys down, but I think Watson is solid. I think they have a big issue outside that though, right? This game, did Josh Williams didn't play in this game at all, right? He didn't play any defensive snaps in this game. So Nazeeh Johnson got the full-on starting role at 20 and only played 26 snaps, right? So it's not like he played a ton. This was after they kind of tried to do this to start the Bengals game last week, but then they had to switch him back out because Nazeeh Johnson maybe wasn't playing his greatest game. So I just kind of feel the Chiefs don't have a great answer for their second cornerback or their third cornerback spot right now. Watson, I don't think is great, but he's fine. He's solid. He's a solid number 2 corner. I liked him better as a number 3, but I'm getting a little concerned that they are really struggling to find that third coverage player in the back end at this point.
Yeah, and you saw Nazeeh Johnson missing, trying to communicate with Drew Tranquil and just completely botching the little slip slot fade, play call. And Nazeeh's trying to communicate to Drew, and Drew's very obviously no, we're not doing that. That's not what
I don't want Drake London on a slot fade.
I don't know what they were. I don't know what exactly it was, but Nazeeh's hey, are we banjoing this? What are we doing? It's just no, what are we doing here? And that was rough. Gives up the first touchdown of the game. I think it's, it's kind of weird. Not weird, but Dave Merritt loves Nazeeh Johnson. You heard how glowing that he spoke about Nazeeh, the kid, the player, and, they love him in that building clearly. Was not the best performance from a Nazeeh Johnson. Joshua Williams in the doghouse, I guess, after playing a lot of meaningful snaps over the last 2 years, including his rookie year for the Chiefs. I think we've talked about, them throwing a lot of guys out there. Like, I do think Jalen Watson's been completely fine as a cornerback too. Like, I don't think there's there's a lot of good cornerback twos in the NFL right now. Like, that's just there's a shortage. It's tough to find, two good ones, but man, you're right. Like, just beyond Jalen Watson, like, they still got a lot. They got a long ways to go. Again, it's one of those things. Like, good job being 3-0. Glad you're 3-0. Lots to work out, lots to figure out. But like, I think there's at least worth questioning whether or not the cornerback 3 is really on the roster for the home stretch right now.
Yeah, and I think the next step even to that is Chamari Connor, like Nick Bolton, probably played his best game of the year, but he's at his best coming downhill. He is at his best first the run, or at least working down to the flats downhill. You don't really love him in coverage when he's going up against wide receivers or athletic tight ends, right? So he's your he's your other option as your third corner. He's your third defensive guy. We just said Najee Johnson only played like under 50% of the snaps. That's because Chamari Connor's eating up a lot of those too, and he's playing in the nickel. And like, when Trent McDuffie's not in the slot, it's Connor. And I don't think that matchup is very beneficial to the Chiefs most of the time. There's some bigger tight ends or some less athletic slot wide receivers that want to win with physicality that he probably matches up well against. But his coverage game, hasn't been the strongest suits. Like, they just don't have a third, I don't even want to say corner, just a third coverage player. They don't have, so whether it's an outside corner and McDuffie goes back to the slot for sure, or it's another slot player so McDuffie can stay outside or following, whoever they want him on. So that is something that I do think the Chiefs probably need to figure out. If it's one of the young guys they have on the team, do they need to go make a move? I just don't know if you love it. And then, like, to the point, Watson, good starting corner, the good corner too. You're fine with it. I don't know how much help you can give him or how much you can protect him while also having to deal with a weak corner 3. And that's where I think the issue for Watson comes in, is you don't want him getting one-on-one with really good wide receivers too often. Like we have seen that, and it doesn't always go great.
Well, I don't think the additional coverage player is coming from Jaden Hicks either. Like, I don't think that's going to be someone that's coming in to be your coverage players. There's like the types of players that the Chiefs have in the back end of that defense don't really, lend themselves to, improve coverage players. What about Christian Roland Wallace? Like, do you think like he could be someone like he's like the last option of a coverage player or a potential coverage player, really?
Let's try it. Right? Let's try. When are the Chiefs going to play an offense that wants to spread them out with like real 11 personnel though, right? Like, everybody they've played with right now kind of is going a little bit heavier, or even like the Falcons, I think, played 11 personnel a good bit, but like Drake London's a very big player. And then they put out, like, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, and then Kyle Pitts is actually gotten a lot better as a blocker, but like, he is not a physical tight end. Just who is going to really try to stretch them out to where you need to put in a pure cover slot defender and not have it be Connor? Is there someone? But yeah,
I'm Bills. It's the Bills.
But they play a lot of heavy personnel now too, though.
I think they have the kind of personnel. And how big are they really playing right now? Like, I was just watching some of the game earlier, and it didn't feel like they were playing too heavy, and they're able to spread them out too. So it's like, it's the same kind of problems. Like, I think, and if you're looking at like, and this is the kind of the case, like, you don't get too overly critical of a 2-time defending Super Bowl champion and all this stuff. But like, I think if you're looking at like ways that this team can get beat, I do think that, the Bills could give this particular team problems with some of the coverage.
For the first 2 weeks, the Bills are 4th and 12 personnel.
But they're spreading them out more.
Yeah, okay, no, they might be spreading them out. I just mean, like, I don't think that's the game where you put a small DB out there for that one, was all I was saying. Yeah,
okay.
They do spread you out. I was just thinking, like, which team is going to play, like, legitimately 11 personnel all game long? I just don't know who it's going to be when the Chiefs play them.
Okay. All right, I can hear that. Does it feel weird that Leo Chanel only got like 14 snaps, and it feels like he was like impactful for several of them? Like, it just like this was his lowest snap count. It probably had more to do with what the Falcons were doing than anything else. But like, he had an impactful 14 plays.
Well, it goes back to, I think the Falcons actually did try to go a little bit lighter and I don't know if it was to keep Leo Chanel off the field. I don't know if it was to force 3 corners on. Like, I don't know what their goal was, but I felt like they did more 11 personnel than you would have expected going into this game. And yeah, maybe that was part of the result, is he didn't play that much, but he definitely had an impact when he's out there. He has quickly become one of the best like chess piece front 7 players in the NFL. on any defense. It's just you put him out there, and no matter what the situation is, when you put him in one of these spots that work well for his skill set, it's going to go well. I mean, Nick Bolton deserves a ton of credit for his play. The Falcons run outside zone. Leo Chanel's over the tackle, and he takes him for a ride. Dana's over the guard, takes him for a ride. Pennell dominates the center. Like, it's outside zone, right? Like, they all completely...
Leo altered Bijan Robinson's path. Like, the path was altered because of how far back he was pushing him. And that's because one of the big things that made that play too.
Yeah, and because of Dana and Pennell, like, there was you couldn't make a hard cutback. Like, you couldn't bend it back the other way because they closed everything down too. So, like, the concept of that run, one, the fullback probably should have gone and tried to hit Nick Bolton. And I don't know if that would have changed anything, but that should have been his job. But you're trying to take everybody out with the flow of the run and then create a cutback lane or a lane for Bijan to cut through. There was nothing there because every offensive lineman got beat up, and like Pennell, Dana winning, they're fine. Yeah, you expect that. Leo Chanel, a linebacker, taking your left tackle for a 3-yard ride straight backwards. That's not on the bingo card, right? Last week when the Bengals tried to double team him on duo and he's playing as a 3-tack and he discards it and makes a tackle, like, you're not ready for that as an offense.
No. And I mean, this isn't the first week that Leo Chanel has done something like that either. That's the other thing that's important is, like, Buddy has been doing this pretty consistently. He is disrupting plays. He is pushing linemen back with his brute strength. I think someone said he's pound for pound might be the strongest player on the team. I think that's an entirely reasonable stance. Matt, do you have anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah, I have actually something very big. The Fraud Ghouls are on their way to suffering 2 losses because they had to play the Chiefs, just like the Baltimore Ravens.
The Bengals have given up touchdowns to big boys in back-to-back weeks as well. So,
is that what the last touchdown was?
Big Cliff basically did the same thing to the Bengals that Andy did to him the week before. The Bengals couldn't color.
For those not watching, the Washington football team Commanders are winning 28-13 with just under 10 minutes left in the third quarter. From the bits that I have seen, it is they have no answer for the Commanders offense as of right now. So yeah, that's fun. That's the second team. I'm gonna go bet against the Falcons to lose next week.
Cam Taylor-Britt talked a lot this week and got torched for a touchdown earlier in the game. And, like, we could be grave dancing right now and the Bengals come back and win this football game. Like, that's entirely in the realm of possibility. Poorly. Yeah, but it ain't looking so hot for them right now, and I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm going to go enjoy the rest of this game. That's going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thanks for listening. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
Maybe they should try playing too high.